My name is Cheyenne Arrington. I am from Paradise, California. My main sport is freestyle cliff diving, and I also do kayaking and other water sports. And my job is connecting athletes and brands and filming videography and taking photos. For me, coming to the outdoors was a really natural conclusion for my life because I grew up in Paradise, California, which is right on the west branch of the Feather River Canyon. So literally from my backyard, you could see the river. And there was nothing else to do in Paradise besides go down to the river and go hiking and mountain biking. And right behind my house, there was a fantastic cliff jumping location. So I just really naturally progressed into cliff diving just because of where I grew up.
What did you, as a young woman getting into the outdoors, need from a female role model?
So for me, my female role model was my mom growing up. We grew up right on the edge of a canyon. There was so much to do, and my mom was always really strongly encouraging us as kids to be getting out and getting outside and getting into sports. So it was easy for me having my mom being there, just constantly encouraging us to push our limits and go outside and go hiking and go swimming. My mom is actually a competitive mountain biker. She's on a mountain biking team. So having her there to take me out and get me into the sports I was really lucky and blessed to have that opportunity because a lot of people, don't have parents or anyone really close to them that are constantly pushing them to be outside. It's something they develop later in life. So for me, really early age, I didn't even have a choice. We were going hiking. So for me, it was my mom. She was definitely an incredible outdoor role model for me, and I've really kind of grown into who she was, which is very special for me.
How do your core values drive you in the outdoors?
Ooh, how do my core values drive me in the outdoors? I would say my core values are like my faith, family, and friendship, and everything in the outdoors strongly encourages me to not only work on myself and with friends that I'm going to the outdoors with. So when you're going backpacking and you're taking friends out to places for this is a really interesting question. My core values. Let's see. Are you talking core values as in my core values affect me in the outdoors?
How do they drive you in the outdoors?
I've never thought about this way, actually. This is cool to get a question that I haven't really thought about before. My core values drive me in the outdoors. Everything that's really important to me is my family, my friends, and my faith, being a Christian. So anytime I go outdoors, first of all, it is kind of like a religious experience. I do believe God created all of this, so it's very humbling for me to come out here and see places like Yosemite and go kayaking in these rapids and just gorgeous canyons in general. And anytime that I'm going outdoors, I like to include my family or my friends. I'm not really someone who goes out by myself. So being able to share these experiences with my friends, especially those who haven't been able to go outside very much, who haven't really had the opportunity, it's just an exciting thing for me to be able to share, through friendship, making friends and showing people these places and, just building deeper connections as friendships, going out with my family. And for me, it's also very faith-focused as well. While we're outdoors, I'll sometimes go into the Christian aspect of it. And it's just exciting that I have had the opportunity to spend my entire life in the outdoors, and it's something that I can share with friends and family as well, especially friends who come from locations where they've never even had the opportunity to go outside. So that's how I would say it's nice for me to share my values with my friends, doing what I love, with people that I love.
So when a lot of people say that they try to find themselves and go traveling, I believe what they're trying to say is that they're trying to find their voice in who they are. So how do you find your voice in the outdoors as a woman? And how does finding your voice in the outdoors translate to other parts of your life?
There's something about going to a new location, even going somewhere that you've already been before. And it's very empowering, I would say, for myself, especially as a woman, to go somewhere and know that I've got the situation under control. I can survive in this environment. I can do whatever sport that I'm doing in this environment, and I can do it confidently. So for me, it's a confidence boost to go outside, to be doing something and say, yeah, I'm very comfortable in this environment, and this is something where I have all the control, and I'm in an environment that I love to be in. So for me, I wanted to get into film and video. I wanted to work with athletes, and my dad was a documentarian growing up, so he was always into film and video as well. So I knew that this was an environment that I was comfortable in. Film and video was something that I wanted to excel in, so it was a very natural way for me to combine both of my passions. And it's nice to be able to go outdoors and to go somewhere, especially freestyle cliff diving. So my sport is freestyle cliff diving. I love to do it. If your friends jumped off a bridge, would you? Absolutely. My only question is, are you gonna gain or a backflip, right? So it's nice to be able to come out to a location, be confident, be excited about what you're doing, and then to capture that in film and video. Because I know there's so many videographers out there who are so good at what they do, right? But not all of them are experienced shooting whitewater or changing ISO, you know, and like changing light, changing settings. You're filming someone who's cliff diving, they're traveling very fast. So it's a very different world of film than if you were to be filming, you know, different like videos and stuff downtown, which other people are far more experienced at than me. But being able to come out here and say, I'm confident not only in my sport, but in how I'm going to capture this sport. And now I get to share this exciting video, this exciting content, you know, something that everyone's really passionate about in a way that online someone else can view it and they can feel like they were there. They can feel like they were included in whatever it was that I'm sharing. And not only do they feel like they were experiencing it, we're very welcoming, especially in the freestyle cliff diving community. We always want people to come out and join us, right? Especially girls. And so we have our own freestyle cliff diving group, women only, called the Cinderellas. And it was started by Chelsea Kuhn on the East Coast, and we kind of all just met through social media. So we're meeting through film, which is a way that I'm sharing my passion in my sport. And it's my passion, my sport. Okay, pause. So I would say that is a really great example of how becoming confident in the outdoors, becoming confident in my craft is now allowing me to meet so many other people and then build my craft and move into more sports and meet more people. So anytime I want like a confidence boost, I'm gonna go do what I love to do. I hope that all
was awesome.
I hope that answered the question. I tangented that one a little bit. We went on a whole adventure.
Do you feel like your voice or confidence is any different from before you spent so much time in the outdoors?
I would say I'm kind of the opposite as far as someone who learns about the outdoors early on. Normally, most of my friends found their passion for the outdoors later in life, and their confidence was weaker in the outdoors at first until they kind of grew there and then experienced the outdoors and became more confident being outside. For me, I grew up on the edge of a canyon. I was more confident in myself hiking alone in a canyon than I was, you would say, in middle school. I mean, who's confident in middle school though? Like, let's be fair, right? Nobody goes to middle school confident, right? But I would say I started out the opposite. My original confidence came from being in a canyon, hiking alone, you know, mountain biking, and just growing up in an atmosphere that was very outdoorsy, which I'm very lucky to have. Many people don't get that. So, ironically, I would say my confidence in the outdoors boosted my confidence in my everyday life. It would kind of be the opposite. And when I meet people in everyday life and bring them to the outdoors, I see the opposite happen. They start out hesitant in the outdoors and then grow more confident. And as you learn how to survive, you know, backpacking, you know, spending multiple nights in the wilderness, it's just gonna make you feel more confident in your everyday life as well. So it's kind of a nice cycle where I can bring people to the outdoors and they grow more confident, whereas I started more confident in the outdoors, and that helped me become more confident in my everyday life.
What are, in your opinion, the most effective strategies for you to build confidence as a woman in the outdoors?
The most effective strategies to build confidence as a woman in the outdoors is hanging out with other women in the outdoors, for sure. For example, when I started in the freestyle cliff jumping scene, I thankfully was already fairly confident outside, and I already knew what my skills were cliff diving. At first, there weren't a lot of women in the groups and on the trips that I went on. And I would see the guys throwing down these massive tricks, these huge backflips, you know, gainer, like everything you could think of, right? And I was wanting to try these things, but I was a little nervous because you kind of grow up thinking, you know, guys are better at sports than you, which isn't necessarily the case. But when I got into freestyle cliff diving, I had never done flips. I'd done a lot of straight jumping and a lot of diving and a lot of swimming, but no like fancy like freestyle flips, I would say. So I was fairly nervous to try anything without having other women there kind of showing me that they can do it too. And so then I met Chelsea, some more girls came into the scene. Chelsea Kuhn, I have been a huge fan of online for the longest time. She throws down harder than even a lot of guys that I know. And it was really exciting to see other women doing these sports, and when I saw Chelsea doing stuff, I was like, okay, I can for sure do this. I can absolutely do this. Like, Chelsea's so cool, she's so encouraging and so motivating. And that's when I realized that it's fine for me to try these things. Turns out the guys are super supportive. The freestyle community is amazing. They were so excited to see me throwing down and learning new tricks and learning flips and so willing to teach me. But as far as getting that first push to try it myself, it was really helpful to have another girl there with me. And so now there's tons of girls in the freestyle community. Come out anytime, we'll teach you whatever you want to learn. It's so much fun. I love teaching girls flips. Girls can learn backflips just as easy as any guy can. There's no barrier to that. And having another girl teach you, I think there's just so much more of a confidence boost when you're trying to do something new.
A reoccurring theme in my chats with women has been the idea that women value emotional intelligence rather than just physical prowess. In your opinion, what is it about valuing emotional intelligence that's so critical to women's success in the outdoors?
So this is actually something that I was learning from you last time we were kayaking. You were talking about emotional intelligence, which is really cool. It is true that, so women do rely more heavily on emotional intelligence, which is something that we all kind of understand at a younger age. And men are very strong, and they have the ability to physically brute force themselves through just about any scenario. So especially, like kayaking, I would say being really confident on choosing a line that you know that you can get through, whereas sometimes I'll see my boyfriend Nick just plow through something, no problem, just because he's strong enough to do it, and it's somewhat frustrating because I'll try to do the same line as him or something the same as him, and you just can't brute force yourself. I mean, yes, I would say I'm very strong, but I can't necessarily just get myself through something just using physical strength. I have to stop and think about it and calculate it and assess the situation. I also do American Ninja Warrior, which is a very physical sport. It's a very exciting sport. And I have met so many women who are so good in Ninja Warrior. And I absolutely love hanging out with them because they'll solve every problem a little bit differently. So if I'm trying to learn how to do this big lache, I mean, you've got all kinds of people who are going to give you different sorts of advice, right? And not to overgeneralize, but men are strong enough to sometimes just say, oh, you just gotta go for it, you just gotta pull really hard, push really hard, just get your hips up and you'll make it. So the kind of advice you're gonna get, not from all guys, but from most guys, is gonna be just force your way through it and then you'll kind of get the hang of it, right? And then I'll ask a girl the same question and she'll look at what I'm trying to do and be like, okay, you wanna make sure you get your elbows past this degree, you wanna make sure your hips get higher than, the certain, and they'll be really nitpicky on choosing how you're gonna get through the problem. I would say that's more of an emotional intelligence aspect of women because you have to think through the entire problem, knowing that you might not have the strength to get through it, but that you absolutely still can get through it. You just need to look at the right technique and the right way for you to get your body through it. So that's the advantage of having a girl tell you how to do something versus a guy tell you how to do something. Girls are gonna break it down. We're gonna be really clear on how we're gonna get from point A to point B, and guys are gonna be like, oh yeah, just send it. It's gonna work out. Both advice sometimes works. Traits in myself that have allowed me to succeed in the outdoors are for sure, I just have good old-fashioned grit. That has definitely allowed me to succeed. I will sufferfest through a trip. I will just absolutely die through an expedition, but still get done with it, still make it from point A to point B. I learned that growing up. We grew up in a very rural town. Our house was very old, kind of falling apart. There was a lot of chores to be done all the time. So my parents instilled in us at a young age, if you've got a daunting task, like sanding the entire side of the house, you've just got to do it. You don't have a choice. Like, it's going to be uncomfortable, but you're going to get through it. So my parents instilled in me, for sure, just grit and determination at a very young age. I'm going to do it. It might suck. Sometimes especially when I was first learning how to kayak, I fell out all the time, and it's such a pain because if you can't roll back over, you've got to drag it to the shore, you've got to empty your boat out, and that can be daunting to some people. Not having fun, essentially. Doing something and not having fun. When you first start learning to rock climb, first couple days aren't going to be fun. Like, you don't have the muscles, you don't have the memory down to do it. So, understanding that sometimes there's a steep learning curve to something, and just pushing through it and realizing that it's going to get better and easier, and you're going to have, like, this is going to be something that you're passionate about once you get it down. That for sure has instilled in me that women can, we can do any sport we want. We can join into any sport we want. And just having grit and determination are the two best things for me personally for getting into any sport and through any scenario. Just good old-fashioned grit. So going into film in the outdoors, I mean, there weren't a lot of female videographers for me to talk to, especially like freestyle cliff diving, because there weren't a lot of freestyle cliff diving girls in the first place. So I would say when I first came into the scene, into freestyle cliff diving scene, I arrived with Nick Coulter because he was a outdoor videographer, documentarian, freestyle cliff jumper. That's what I wanted to do. I messaged him on Instagram and asked if I could be his intern. So I actually interned for Nick Coulter while filming for Flow State. And it was really exciting for me to come on these trips and be like the only girl kind of in the group that I would see at first who was cliff diving and filming. So I was doing both. I was just interning for Nick. So that was a really exciting thing for me. And of course there's amazing female videographers all over the world doing incredible sports. I just didn't encounter very many early on, specifically in freestyle cliff diving. Now there are absolutely more as our sport has grown, but I do wish I had met more female videographers earlier on. I don't think that I felt blocked from the videography community, but it would have been inspiring for me early on to run into more female videographers in the outdoors. And at no point did the men ever make me feel like I couldn't be a videographer, I couldn't be a cliff diver. They're very, very, very supportive and encouraging in every aspect. But personally, I wish I ran into more females who were doing film earlier on. And I think maybe I would have launched my career a bit sooner if I had. Because women look at things differently, we look at business differently. Getting advice from a guy who's going into film for business is like, oh yeah, just do it, just see what happens. Whereas women would kind of walk you through it. I'm not just gonna quit my job and just do it, right? So meeting women who are like, later on, who are like, oh yeah, like you do this, and this is how you file your tax information. This is how you do everything appropriately. That would have been nice to have early on for me to kind of take that leap as far as having more women to do it with.
That's a great answer.
Cool. Which is true too. Guys, honestly, if you ask a guy for advice to do something like film, their answer is going to be the same for sports. They're going to be like, just figure it out. I'm not going to quit my job and just figure it out. It's terrifying. But what if it doesn't work? And what if I can't go back to my other job? Whereas women do tend to be more laid out. I mean, one of my girlfriends, when I went into film, she sent me a whole PDF document on everything I needed to do before I quit my job. So I think women will tend to really go for something if they feel 100% qualified for it, because we think everything through analytically. Whereas guys will just jump into something if they only meet like 60% of the requirements, and they'll figure it out for them from there. So it's pretty interesting, the difference between men and women. Yeah. You notice that? Even applying for jobs. Some of my guy friends will apply for jobs and they're like halfway qualified, and I'm not going to apply for a job unless I'm 100% qualified. But I don't do that anymore. Now I apply for jobs and I'm only 40% qualified, and you know what? I still got the job. So you don't have to be 100% to get there.
Why do you think that is?
I think men are used to pushing their way through obstacles, and they're used to figuring it out as they go. Which is something that I'm not saying it's generalized just men and women. I also do that. I'll just, all right, let's send it, see how it works out, huck and pray, right? But I think men tend to do it more often in work and other fields as well. Whereas women we like to be fully prepared for every situation. We like to know what's happening when it's going down. We're the moms of the group often. And this is an overgeneralization, but I think men find that they are oftentimes more successful just going for something and seeing how it turns out, whereas women are more successful making sure they're ready for the situation before they enter the problem or the task, because we like to be prepared for anything.
Do you think we, in wanting to be over-prepared for things, do you think that holds us back as women?
I think women are taught to be very prepared for every situation, and that does hold us back in some aspects, because there's a lot of things that I think we could do without having to be fully prepared for it. But knowing that you're prepared for it gives you a lot of confidence and drive in whatever the task is, which then allows us to excel at it. So it goes either way. It might hold you back if you're letting it hold you back, or it might allow you to succeed if you feel like you're completely ready for the task at hand. So it can go either way. But I've become more comfortable recently just going for things that I'm even way underqualified for because I've found out that, once you're there, there's going to be people who are going to help you. There's going to be you learning about yourself and how you can fix the situation. So just go for it, whatever you want to do. It's really cliche advice, and it almost sounds like masculine advice, right? Like, just go for it. But really, just go for it. You're going to meet people who are going to help you along the way.
Like, rely on your resources.
Yeah, rely on your resources, rely on your skills. Like, if you've been practicing in any sort for whatever sport you want to do, just, don't start out on class 4 rapids, start the right way, but don't be afraid to start. You're never going to be 100% prepared to get in a kayak and go down a rapid. It's just not going to happen. It's not, I'm sorry. I learned how to roll in a pool. I could roll on both sides. I was so excited. I was like, oh, what could I do to possibly get more prepared? I flipped in still water. Do you think I could roll? I wasn't even in a rapid and I couldn't roll. So just go for it. True story.
It's so good.
I taught Nick how to roll, and he can roll better than me in rapids. It's so frustrating. Also, because he's strong, he can just really push it up. I'm not saying I'm not strong, but I'm not Nick strong. So
that'll be a new source of measurement.
Nick strong.
So I might have already asked this question, but I think it might have a little bit different connotation with the last question. What are, in your opinion, the most effective strategies to build confidence as a woman in the outdoors?
The most effective way to build confidence as a girl in the outdoors is to, first of all, do what we do. Be prepared for the situation. Don't go on a hike or a backpack trip, get the right shoes, break them in, be prepared for a situation, but don't over prepare for it. Just make sure you're ready to, I got a little tangent there. For women building sports in the outdoors, definitely don't be afraid to try anything. Any sport you want, don't be afraid to try it. I guarantee if you're afraid to try it because maybe it's a male-dominated sport, they're gonna love having you there. And if that group doesn't love having you there, you just met the wrong group. Just go find another group. Be prepared for what you're going to be getting yourself into. If you're gonna go on a cliff diving trip, get a wetsuit that fits you, wear good shoes. Just do the basic minimum of what you should have for that sport, and then go for it. It's not gonna be as scary as you think it is. It's not gonna be as intimidating as you think it is. And even starting low, and as far as cliff jumping, just start from some low heights. You're gonna build up confidence a lot faster than you think you will. Especially if you're with the right people, because everyone's gonna hype you up. So go with a good group. Number 1, choose a good group. That's how you're gonna really excel in any outdoor sport.
Where do you want to see female athletes in 5 years in your sports?
In my sport. In freestyle cliff diving, seeing women 5 years from now, we're already getting so many girls who are throwing down really, really hard. We've got Kimberly, we've got Courtney, we've got Chelsea and Brenna. These are all women who are throwing down. Laura is throwing down really hard in freestyle cliff diving. So I don't even think it's going to take 5 years to get to the point. Men already strongly respect the women in our sport, and women respect the men in our sport. Whereas I would say 5 years ago, this is a good question for 5 years back. 5 years ago, there weren't, a lot of women in freestyle cliff diving. There was Chelsea, but there wasn't like a group or anything. And I would hope to see actually freestyle cliff diving in general get more recognition as a safe sport. Everyone, if you say, oh, I'm going cliff diving, they're like, oh, I know someone who got hurt cliff diving. It's a terrible sport. Why would you do that? I would just like to see people be more open to how safe we are freestyle cliff diving. We are not professional high divers, which is different. It's like comparing ballerinas and breakdancers. It's us. They're both safe, awesome sports, but they're different, right? I would just like to see more respect for how safe we are, and us, as we continue to build events and competitions, seeing more women in our competitions, which is already happening right now. But overall, I would just like to see the sport itself be a little more accepted in the outside of the community. If you post a cliff diving competition on Facebook, you're gonna get a lot of people telling you why it's a bad idea. And if you post a high diving competition on Facebook, everyone's gonna be excited about it. So it's very different, and women are already dominating, so we're already doing great there. I would just like to see the sport itself grow. Which is true, nobody hates on Red Bull cliff divers.
Because they got the Red Bull.
Because they see them as a professional. Some sports, if you see someone kayaking, some random person on Facebook isn't gonna be like, oh my gosh, they're kayaking. Like, they can see they're wearing a helmet and a life jacket and they're in a kayak, so they can see that there were barriers to get into the sport. And the barriers are buying the proper gear. For cliff diving, you just see someone standing on a cliff in a swimsuit. There's no barriers to get into that sport, and as far as they know, this person has been pressured into jumping off the cliff. Peer pressure is really big. They could think there's like other things influencing them as far as like drugs involved, which is not the case with our group. We are very careful, we depth check, we do everything, but people don't see that. They just see someone diving or jumping off a waterfall. So it's easy for them to judge it and say that's not safe. Whereas they don't see all the preparation, the years of training, working out to make sure you can withstand those impacts. They don't see how much effort is going into the sport. They just see someone standing on a cliff. It's easy to judge that. It's harder to judge someone with a Red Bull logo standing on a cliff, because now they've got something behind them saying, oh, we know they're gonna be safe. So I would just like to see freestyle cliff diving become a more welcomed sport, especially online.
We have a junior team that's between the ages of 14 and 16. What insight would you offer them if they were sitting here right now about being in outdoor sports?
So your junior team is for rafting?
Yes, they're all females at this point.
Awesome. That's really cool. So if I had a group of young teenage women who are excited to get into a sport and excited to get into a profession and using this sport, I would say, do not be afraid of what you're about to do. There are going to be setbacks, and they're going to be scary, and that's okay. Because you're not growing in a sport, and you're not learning more about, the river, or about anything, if you're not incurring these setbacks that are supposed to scare you. This is how you're going to grow in your sport. Make all the friends you can, because anytime you're in a new community, or you're joining a community, or an up-and-coming community, it's amazing to have this support system of all these people around you who are going through the same things. I wish I had a group, an all-girl group of like cliff divers when I was getting started. Oh, that would have been so cool. I had an amazing group. The guys were all an amazing group. But now that we have an all-female group of cliff divers, the Cinderellas, we're all pushing ourselves so much more just having each other. So, especially in a young teenage group that's getting started, rely on each other. This is your support system. This is your base. Listen to your mentors. I guarantee they know what they're telling you. You might think that you can do something. You might think that you can't do something. If they tell you one or the other, listen to them. Listen to your mentors. Be prepared for every situation. There's no such thing as too much preparation, but don't let that hold you back. Go out, try it, do it, listen to your friends, build that mentor base, and you're gonna have such a fun time, I guarantee it. Yep, definitely listen to people. If they say you probably shouldn't do something, you probably shouldn't. That's how I broke a toe. So.
Was that how you broke it?
Well, like, 3 people said I'd be fine, and the rest said don't do it. I listened to the 3 people that said I'd be fine. And I mean, to be fair, I am fine. But I did break a toe, so if someone says buy these shoes, don't do it without these shoes, you should probably buy the shoes.
So what ended up happening with your toe?
So first red flag, so it was a rock slide. The first red flag was that it was called meat grinder. That should have been a warning for me. We were canyoneering in Switzerland. This was a really, really cool rock slide. And to be fair, the other girl who was there, Riri, who I love and adore, said, you should absolutely buy these shoes if you're gonna be doing canyoneering and rock slides. The shoes were like $200. I was broke, I didn't buy the shoes, and she said, you know what, Cheyenne, you've got this, you can still do these rock slides, just be careful because you're not wearing the proper shoes. I had a helmet on, I had a jacket on, I had everything else on, not the proper shoes. And you know what? You know what got injured? This whole trip, 14 days, I broke a toe. Would it have been cheaper to buy the $200 shoes than to pay $3,000 for a toe surgery? Absolutely. It absolutely would have been cheaper. So, you know, if you're getting into a sport, don't take shortcuts. Don't recommend that. Was I safe going down this slide? Yes. Did she know I wasn't gonna die going down this slide? Yes. Did she warn me? Yes.
That's the best story.
So, listen to what people more experienced than you have to say, every time. There are people in groups who are leaders, and there are people in groups who are authentic leaders, who are caring for the group's well-being and for the situation of the whole group. There are people who will take you out to do stuff that might be dangerous and it might be something they're excited about. You need to tell the difference between, is this person taking me into something out of what my limits are, or is this person bringing me on a trip to help me grow? And anytime you're getting into anything dangerous or outdoor or physical, make sure you're going with the right people. Someone who is an authentic leader who wants to help you, they're also going to turn into a mentor, whether they like it or not. If they're an authentic leader, they're going to be a mentor, and they're going to help you through a situation. They're going to let you know when something is out of your limits, out of your boundaries. They're going to let you know when something is within your limits and is within your boundaries. They're not going to try to push you to do something dangerous without having the proper safety setup to get you out of that situation. Someone who's a really good leader is going to be giving you advice as you go through whatever trial you're going through, and they're going to help you get through it, and they're going to be there for you without putting down on you if you don't want to do it. So it's important to know who you're listening to. Don't just listen to anyone who's in a sport. Know who you're listening to. Understand that they have your best interest in mind. Don't listen to John Fay. Listen to Nick.
How do we address inner timidness? And what direction do we need to take to build our understanding of how to work through that?
Inner timidness is not something that I faced initially. When I was first getting into cliff diving, if someone said it was safe to jump off this cliff, you bet I was going to jump off that cliff. I wasn't scared at all. As I continued through the sport and actually incurred injuries, I got a tailbone injury jumping off a 72-footer. That was very uncomfortable, and it was a long-lasting injury. I broke a toe going canyoneering. Now I would say I face timidness more than I did then, because now I understand that you are not actually invincible versus what you might think. I can't just do anything I want without facing the consequences if I'm not ready for something or mentally in the right mindset to do it. I might have jumped 70 feet before, maybe wasn't ready to jump 70 feet that day. As I now go through life and outdoor sports and I'm timid about trying something new, I have to stop and assess a couple things. Am I mentally ready to do this? Am I physically ready to do this? And am I emotionally ready to do this? Because these are all three very different things. Emotionally, I might be too tired that day. I might just be too drained to do it. Mentally, sometimes you have off days, it happens, sometimes you're totally on it. And physically, sometimes you are too sore, or you're too tired, or you just have not had a good week, and you're not ready to do this thing. So I assess those 3 things, and as long as every one of them is greater than 50%, I will try it. If any one of them is lower than 50%, if I am ready to go and I'm amped and I'm feeling strong, but mentally I'm just not in it, I need to understand when to listen to that inner voice of being, am I just too timid to do it? Or should I actually not do it right now? More often than not, I've just been too timid. I'm ready to do it. And it's just a matter of doing things over and over again and having repetition and just understanding, I don't need to be scared of this. Like, I've got this, and I know I've got this, and everyone here knows I've got this. So it's just a matter of practice makes perfect. Push through it, keep doing it, and I promise that feeling will go away. If it's still there though, listen to what it's trying to tell you. And it's never gonna go away entirely. You'll always be scared of, a large flip or a large jump or a large rapid. Like, you're always gonna be nervous, but listen to why you're nervous. Ask people around you and assess the situation for yourself. And then send it.
How do you think we should be elevating women in extreme sports?
There's a lot of ways that we could be elevating women in extreme sports right now that we're not doing. And there's a lot of different aspects that can be elevating women in extreme sports. So as far as starting at the bottom, when they're growing into the sport and learning the sport, now more than ever, we have a lot of women who are getting into sports, and we have a lot of mentors and teachers and resources there to help them succeed. I would say now more than ever, which is exciting, and it's always gonna get better. As you progress through the line, it's nice to see sponsors more open to sponsoring women in sports specifically. You have so many people in extreme sports who have sponsors, and I don't think women get enough recognition for what they're doing in sports on social media to get the sponsors for those sports. So I think just companies and brands realizing that this is a new up and coming thing and sponsoring women and really encouraging them and helping them get the gear they need in order to succeed is very important. Also, a lot of sports equipment is made more for men than it is for women. So I just saw Astral came out with a life jacket, correct me if I'm wrong, that has like a better boob cuts in it, which is not something that a guy would think about. But these jackets are kind of tight, you want them tight, and that is one thing that might be inhibiting women in sports, is just having gear that's not made for them. So props to Astral for doing that. And it's exciting to see more gear geared towards women. Now, if you step away from that, so you've got women going into sports, encouraging them more, giving them the resources and the supplies they need to be excelling in these sports, and then a step beyond that is media around sports. So media coverage, they say, oh, maybe women's sports don't get as much attention, so they're not giving them as much coverage, but they're not getting as much attention because they're not getting as much coverage. So there's so many layers to this onion of women in sports, and as a society, we're getting through it. But it's important that every aspect is here to help, and not just help, because it's not like we need, more help than men to get through these sports, but we need a support system that's allowing us to get there in the first place. And if you take a step back even from that, when you watch women in anything, women in acting, and you're watching Hollywood interviewing questions, they're asking them sometimes dumb questions like, what's your diet, or what dress size are you wearing, or how did you get to this, right? It's like we need to get beyond this whole older way of thinking, whereas the men are getting questions like, oh, how did this physically impact you, like training for the role of Thor, So it's like everyone needs to understand we're all here, we're all competing in this together. It's a whole system. And unfortunately, the whole system needs work, but the whole system is getting better.
What are your thoughts on the amount of media bandwidth that companies are allocating to female athletes?
Ooh, the amount of media allocated to female athletes could be better. It absolutely could be better. And it's easy to look at a problem and say, oh, here's an obvious solution, but you're not actually doing anything, right? Are you Googling more women's sports? Maybe not. Like, what are you doing to help this problem? So I'm really excited. I am focusing more of my media on women in sports. So I'm a videographer. I'm about to go on a trip for 3 weeks working with a freestyle cliff diver. She is an ex-Olympic high diver as well, which gives more credit to her, getting into freestyle cliff diving. And we're doing a whole trip focused on her as a woman in cliff diving, which is very exciting. So media companies really don't give women that much credit in sports. If it's a co-ed sport, they'll be like, oh, here's our obligatory girl in the sport, but they're not going to come out with like a whole segment necessarily on her, which is what other women to see as we're coming through. I wouldn't say necessarily the dark ages of women in sports, but for a long time it hasn't been encouraged, and now these last 2 generations have been really encouraging it and pushing it. I think we're going to get better at this in the next 5 years. I really, really do. Could we be better at it right now? Absolutely. Let's give some more credit to how hard these women are working to be in these sports, especially with gear that isn't even necessarily designed for them. So there could definitely be more credit to women in sports.
So on that topic, how do we mitigate doling out a show-up trophy versus genuine earned female representation?
Oh, that's good. Read the first bit one more time.
How do we mitigate doling out a show-up trophy, which is what you said, like
your obligatory girl, yeah,
versus genuine earned female representation in the sport?
One way we can promote women in sports more than just being like, oh, here is our honorary female in this sport, right, is by encouraging women to get into that sport and giving them the resources they need to excel in that sport, because I guarantee if you did, you wouldn't just have one woman in the sport. So, if you're talking about any world of extreme sports, it's going to be male dominated, which is common, but we need to be helping more women have the resources they need in the first place to get into that sport, rather than being like, oh, here's our one honorary female, isn't this great, look, it's a sport for 2 people. Wow. But then there's so many gatekeeping things leading up to that. So in just giving women the supplies they need, giving them sponsors that they need. Women need sponsors too. Men oftentimes have more sponsors than they know what to do with, and we're getting better at this, but just helping women right now at the early stages get into that sport so that they can excel at that sport. Which is why Rafting Magazine is awesome, because they have an all-girls team. This is really exciting, and I've never even heard of an all-girls rafting team. These girls are gonna have such an incredible opportunity, thanks to Rafting Magazine, to get into this sport at an early age and get sponsors and be allowed to excel in it. So hopefully we'll be watching some really exciting media coverage of men and women in sports in the future, and we'll be seeing these girls in it. If I met a young female athlete who is trying to excel in a sport and maximize her potential in a specific sport, I would say the first thing you need to build is a good mentor program. You're going to need people who are helping you understand the sport, the gear that you need, and they're also going to be helping you get sponsors that you need to excel in this sport. I would highly recommend finding and connecting with other women in the sport, because they are going to be very excited to see you there, and they're going to be excited to help you throughout this sport. Get male mentors as well, but absolutely get a couple female mentors, because they're going to understand challenges that men might not even understand are challenges, especially when it comes to proper gear fitting and proper encouragement. Women encourage women differently than men encourage women, and you'll see a difference for sure if you ask a guy how to solve a problem and a girl how to solve a problem. So really make sure that you have people there to guide you who are going to understand your specific problems. Don't be afraid at all to just jump into this sport full speed. You have every right to be there. You have everything that you need to be there. You just have to figure out how to get it, and it's going to be a little bit harder for you. Statistically, it will be, but you're going to absolutely be able to excel at this sport. And rock on when you get first place too. If I were to give any last-minute advice to females who are trying to get into a sport or athletes, or even just into a group to hang out and have fun, first of all, don't be afraid to do it. I guarantee that if you find the right group of people, they're going to be more than stoked to have you there. If they're not, it's the wrong group of people. Move on. Find your people in that sport. Find your people in your mentorship programs and your sponsorships. So no matter where you're going, the most important thing that you can have is connections. Making sure you have good connections, making sure you have a solid base, and it's people who are out there helping you succeed and you're helping others succeed. I cannot recommend enough just making sure you're doing your sport with the right people, and I guarantee not only will you excel in it, but you're going to have a great time. And if you see someone else who's trying to get into that sport as well, welcome them in, because there's something about learning a skill for yourself and then sharing that skill with someone else. So when I first learned backflips, for example, I was on cloud 9. I was so excited. I couldn't believe I was doing it. I was like, Mom, look at this. I wanted to show off to everyone that I could do backflips. So I had a girl come up to me after she had seen me doing all these backflips, and she said, hey, listen, I've always wanted to know how to do backflips, but I've never wanted to ask my guy friends, and they can all do backflips. Could you teach me how to do backflips? When I tell you, that was so nice. It was so lovely to hear, and I felt so good that someone felt comfortable coming up and asking me to teach them how to do backflips. Sure enough, she was doing 10-foot backflips that same day. It's, once you've got someone to really break it down for you, they're not that hard. They're really fun to do. And so now she's throwing backflips, I'm throwing backflips. I had 2 other girls come up. They wanted to learn backflips, and by the end of the day, all 4 of us did like tandem backflips together, and it was off 10 feet, which is a sizable height, and it was something that none of them came out that day with the intent of learning, and they had friends who did backflips, but they weren't comfortable asking them to teach them. So don't only like get this advice, but share this advice as well. I think I have more fun now teaching other people how to do tricks and filming other women, especially in their sport, than I ever did having people film me or having people teach me. And I've learned a lot more sharing my knowledge. So get out there, have fun, meet people, build a group, and then share what you've learned. And I guarantee you're gonna have the time of your life.
How do we discuss the soft bigotry of low expectations for women?
Ooh, that's a heavy-hitting question, actually. The soft bigotry of low expectations. Oh, man.
It's okay, you're a girl, you don't have to do it.
No, this is a good question. Like how to word it properly, because even any sport that you come into, there is always this connotation that women can be not as good and still be a part of the sport. Like, it's okay if the girl of the sport is not as good, and it's almost even a trouble for women, because I might try a sport and I won't be as good as the guys at it, but I'll be like, oh, it's okay, I'm doing good enough for a girl. And one time I caught myself thinking that, and I was like, wow, is that really where I want to be going with this? And it's challenging because some people do it subconsciously. You're either limiting yourself subconsciously, thinking, oh, I'm not strong enough to do this, I'm not as strong as that guy, maybe I shouldn't be able to do it as well as him. And it's subconscious for a lot of men doing it as well, because maybe they have had girls try their sports who weren't trying. If you're not trying your best, you're not going to be the best. It's pretty simple. And if you think you're holding yourself back, you're going to hold yourself back. Unfortunately, we just have to get out there and prove to ourselves and prove to guys that not only can we be just as good, we can be better in our own ways. We can be better at a sport, or just better at making the sport for us in a way that we are comfortable doing a sport. So it goes both ways. I would say it tends to be an unconscious bias. There are guys out there who will make it a very real bias. And you need to understand that they're dealing with their own issues, and what they think of you does not impact you, and it does not impact you in that sport, and you don't even necessarily want to be friends with that person. Okay? If they're gonna be doing that, you don't need them in your life. There's plenty of guys out there. I even had a guy say something to me one time when I was scared about doing something. I thought it was a pretty big jump, and I was like, you had to jump out to clear a gap. And I was genuinely concerned that I didn't have the leg strength to clear this gap. Because honestly, another girl had tried it before that I didn't know, and it didn't go well for her. And so I was thinking, maybe because I am a girl, maybe I'm not as strong to clear this gap. And I kind of said that, and I had one of my guy friends say, are you kidding me? Like, are you serious right now? Like, yeah, you're a girl, but you're a hell of a lot stronger than a lot of my guy friends, and they've done this, and I know for a fact that you would be okay. And so I was like, you know what, why was I thinking that? Why was I even thinking of that as a concern? Sure enough, not only did I clear the gap, I went so far past the gap, it was not even a problem. But it was important for me to realize, don't ever underestimate yourself, and especially don't underestimate yourself because of your gender. We may be physically weaker in some aspects, but we are a hell of a lot stronger in other aspects, and you need to keep that in mind. You are an individual competing and working with other individuals. It's an individual level. And this is all about you and what you believe you can do.
I've also noticed that, and you mentioned it before, women tend to rely more on technique rather
Yes.
than pure strength.
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
Absolutely, I would say, as a woman, I rely more on my technique solving a problem than my brute strength solving a problem. This makes itself prevalent, especially in a sport like Ninja Warrior, which is something that I love to do. I love competing. I had so much fun going on the show. There's so many strong women on the show. But if you're gonna be doing a massive drop, let's say you're grabbing onto an obstacle and you're sliding down and you're gonna hit a big drop, you need to make sure you have the strength going into this movement, because women physically, you know, our shoulders and stuff, yeah, sure, we're lighter for one, which is nice. Like, that's an advantage for us. A guy can just brute force their way through that obstacle. They're gonna catch themselves and be strong enough, and they're gonna move on, right? As a girl, though, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't gonna get hurt, because this isn't something, women tend to have less upper body strength, which is true, which means I just needed to focus more on the technique as I went into that obstacle. So I didn't go around and ask my big buff guy friends, hey, what do you think about this big drop, right? They were gonna say, oh, just hold on for dear life and hope it goes well, right? I'm not looking to rip out a shoulder. No, I went to some of the other girls and I was like, hey, how are you going to manage this big drop? Because I'm concerned about, you know, the sheer force of it as you're hitting the bottom. And sure enough, they had way different answers. They were like, as you get up onto the bar, like, make sure you're as high as you can get, and then as you come into the drop, like, lock in. And they talked through like 6 or 7 different things that they were going to do to prepare themselves for that drop. And you know what? Of the people I asked, more of the girls got through it than the guys did, which was very satisfying. And it was not only because, you know, sure, the guys had the strength, but they were preparing on a much deeper level for how they were going to get through this obstacle. So yes, women need to plan things out sometimes out of necessity a bit more to make sure that we're safe. And that helps in other sports. We're gonna like look at a rapid maybe, and we're gonna plan things out differently than a guy would. So it's good to get other girls' advice as well. Kind of forgot where that question started, but I went through with that.
Yeah, you answered it.
Okay, good.
Relying on technique more than strength.
It's okay to rely more on technique. It's okay to look at yourself and say, you know, maybe I'm not strong enough to paddle through this huge hole right here, but you know what I can do? Like, I can work my way around it, and you're still gonna get through it. So it's important to realize, you know, think about the technique and ask other women especially how they're going to be solving a problem. Because I guarantee it's gonna be different, and it's gonna be information that you're gonna wanna know.
Do you think relying on technique can reduce injuries?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Relying on technique is huge for reducing injuries. I have done a lot of training for American Ninja Warrior, and I train with David Campbell. He's called the Godfather. And one thing that he does differently than everyone else is he's also, I don't want to say, you know, thinking in the feminine way as far as relying on technique, but he's seen other people get injured, and he's very critical on technique. How are you going to do something to prevent long-term injuries? How are you going to do something to prevent short-term injuries? I will get through an obstacle and be like, look, David, I made it through the obstacle. And he's like, yeah, that was great. Did you see how much stress you put on your elbows going through that? Yeah, you will in like a year if you keep doing it that way. And actually a lot of women that I know train with him because he's so critical on technique. So I'll go to a gym and I'll listen to what other guys have to say, you know, because they have very good information as well. And I'll be like, okay, David, what am I doing wrong? And he's like, well, you were really catching, you know, heavy back here. You need to be using your, you know, use your back muscles. So technique, focusing on technique, it can hold you back if it makes you too afraid to attempt it in the first place, but it's not gonna hold you back. It's gonna help you get further in a sport if you're using it to prevent long-term injuries, and if you're using it to prevent short-term injuries as far as not making it through a problem or an obstacle. Listen to technique, listen to your gut, but still attempt the problem. Don't give up on a problem because of technique. Yeah, true story. David's amazing. One other thing that I wanted to say regarding women in sports, as if I was giving a young girl advice on getting into a sport, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid of when you do fail, because you're going to. Don't let one bad day set you back for a whole week. Expect to fail. And as far as we go through planning everything out, plan ahead of time how you're going to react to that failure. It's going to happen. And it might happen in front of a lot of your friends and mentors. I flopped 30 feet in front of friends and mentors, and it wasn't even a high jump. I just, mentally, first of all, I wasn't ready for the jump, so I should have listened to myself. And it sucked, because first of all, it hurt really bad. It hurt my ego in front of all my friends. I should have gone back up and tried it again to like correct the problem. And then it took me longer than it should have to get back up to flipping 30 feet. I've had no problem with 30 feet in the past. Be ready for the failure, and don't think, oh, it's just because I'm not good enough, or it's because I'm not this enough. Everybody fails, but I think when guys fail, they all kind of laugh it off together. And when girls fail, we tend to take it a little personally. Don't take it personal. It's okay to suck. And if you suck at something, you're only gonna get better by sucking more, right? Like, it's not gonna get easier, you know, you have to fail at some point. Just move on with it, roll with it. In fact, I encourage you to fail. Do something knowing that you're going to safely fail, and then understand how you're gonna move to the next step. Failing is only a setback if you let it be a setback. I would say a lot of women don't want to get into freestyle cliff diving because they just hear the bad sides, you know. Everyone knows someone who's been hurt cliff jumping, hitting a rock, anything, you know. That's because they were doing it unsafe. And we have to just show people that we're safe. We have a whole documentary talking about how we're safe, but not everyone's gonna watch that. They're just gonna watch you dive and make a judgment from there. So.
What's the name of the documentary?
Flow State. If you would like to learn more about freestyle cliff diving, how we're safe, how we find these locations, and how we as a team ensure every location is completely safe to dive off of, look up Flow State on YouTube by Nick Coulter. Coulter. It's a great documentary. You're gonna love it. And it'll give you a huge perspective on cliff diving in general. So click on this link. If you want to find out more about me, if you would like to get in contact with me, you can find me on YouTube. My name is Cheyenne Summer. I'm on all social media platforms, and if you look up the Paradise Strong Ninja Warrior, you can see my run, you can see how I did, and you can find more information about me. Please feel free to reach out to me, send me DMs on Instagram. I am more than happy to read through them, give you advice, help you do something, or work on a project with you. So find me on Instagram, find me on YouTube, all social media platforms, Cheyenne Summer.